12 moments. That's all it took to change everything, not just R&B, everything. You felt every single one of them at cookouts, school dances, late night drives, wedding receptions. The music was already in your life. Today we're getting into the stories behind it, the fights, the records, the moments the world finally had to admit it had no choice but to bow. Starting at number 12. Number 12, Janet Jackson, Control, 1986. She was 19 years old, 2 failed albums on her record, and the most famous family in music history telling her quietly, persistently, that she couldn't do this without them. That's the setup for what became one of R&B's most important moments. But here's what you need to understand about Janet Jackson before 1986. She'd been on television since childhood. She'd been managed, choreographed, groomed. Everyone had a plan for her. Everyone had opinions. And quietly, methodically, she decided to walk away from all of it. She found producers Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. And here's the part that gets me. Jam and Lewis had actually been fired from the Jacksons camp 2 years earlier when they missed a show with the time for being snowed in during a recording session. The family's camp cut them. Janet found them. And what they built together in Minneapolis rewrote the entire blueprint. Control hit number 1 on the Billboard 200. 5 singles reached the top 5 of the Hot 100, including When I Think of You, her first number 1 pop hit. 5 top 5 singles from one album from a 19-year-old woman the industry had all but written off. But the chart numbers are almost beside the point. The album was literally called Control, and every single note on it was proof of concept. She wasn't making music for her family's approval anymore. She was making it for herself and for every woman who ever had to fight to define who she was on her own terms, in her own voice, with nobody else's hand on the dial. That's not just an album, that's a statement, and it's where this story begins. Number 11. The birth of New Jack Swing, 1987 to 88. You've heard New Jack Swing your whole life. You might not know the name, but you know that sound. The bounce, the hip-hop drums sitting underneath smooth R&B vocals that feel like they're gliding right on top of them. It was everywhere by 1990. But before it existed, and this is what most people don't know, rappers and R&B singers didn't really work together. Teddy Riley said it himself. Singers were soft, rappers were street, 2 completely separate worlds. Then a teenager from the St. Nicholas houses in Harlem had a dream. Literally, he's talked about dreaming of James Brown and Michael Jackson recording a song together. And he spent his teenage years trying to make that fusion real. By 17, he was already producing. By 18, he had his first Billboard Hot 100 hit with Kool Moe Dee's Go See the Doctor. By the time he was 19, the sound he was building started appearing everywhere. In 1987, his fingerprints were on Keith Sweat's I Want Her. In 1988, his group guy dropped Groove Me, and R&B never sounded the same. That same year, Bobby Brown took the template mainstream with Don't Be Cruel, which hit number 1 on the Billboard 200. The term New Jack Swing had been coined in a 1987 Village Voice profile of Riley. The critic called it the new kid on the block. swinging it, and it was everywhere within 2 years. Here's the real significance. Before New Jack Swing, there was R&B radio and there was hip hop radio. They were separate industries, separate audiences, separate worlds. After it, those barriers stopped making sense. Teddy Riley didn't just create a sound, he created a bridge, and every R&B artist who came after him walked across it. And if you've ever danced to something that hit your body before your brain caught up, that's what he built. Real talk, only 9% of you are subscribed. That hurts. We're spending hours digging through archives, fact-checking every detail, bringing these stories back to life. And if you're watching this far, you clearly care. So hit subscribe. It's free and takes 2 seconds. Now, to my subscribers, barely any of you have joined the membership. And honestly, that stings even more. You know the work we put in. You keep coming back. If these videos have ever made you feel something, if this music means something to you, join the membership. It's $1 coffee a month, and it's the only way we keep this going. Let's build this together. All right, back to it. Number 10, Boyz II Men, End of the Road, 1992. In 1992, Boyz II Men flew to Philadelphia with producers Babyface and L.A. Reid to record one song for an Eddie Murphy movie. They had a tight schedule. They recorded the lead vocals in 3 hours. 3 hours. And what came out of that session became the longest running #1 single in Billboard Hot 100 history at that point in time. End of the Road hit #1 on August 15th, 1992, and stayed there 13 weeks, 13 consecutive weeks at the top of the chart. Which meant it broke a record that had stood since 1956. Elvis Presley's Don't Be Cruel, 36 years at the top of that list. And 4 men from Philadelphia harmonizing in a studio for 3 hours ended it. Now here's what gives this moment even more weight. Billboard had just switched to SoundScan, actual verified sales data, replacing the manual reports that radio stations and record stores had been submitting for decades. Those old numbers had been routinely manipulated. When real data started flowing, the chart slowed down. In 1991, there were 27 different #1 hits. In 1992, 12, because when you measure real sales, R&B songs don't rotate out. They hold. What that means is this. For the first time, the industry could see what was actually selling. And what was actually selling, what people were actually buying, actually spinning in their homes, actually playing when the party needed to feel something, was R&B. Boyz II Men held the top for 13 weeks. Then Whitney Houston came and held it for 14. The same year, R&B owned 1992 with real data for the first time. And if End of the Road ever found you at the end of something you couldn't let go of, if that harmony caught you on the way out the door of something you loved, you know it wasn't just a hit. It was the truth.
I ain't got no time for you playing with my heart like this, baby.
Number 9, Mary J. Blige, My Life, 1994. Here's what most people skip when they talk about this album. Mary J. Blige was in one of the darkest periods of her life during those recording sessions. Clinical depression, addiction to alcohol and drugs, an abusive relationship. She's talked about it openly, that during this time, she didn't want to be here. And instead of hiding any of that, she put every ounce of it directly into the microphone.
I know we all are struggling.
My Life dropped on November 29th, 1994. It debuted at #1 on the R&B chart and stayed there for 8 consecutive weeks. But the chart position isn't the moment.
And you'll be at peace with yourself.
The moment is what happened in living rooms and car speakers across the country when people heard this record for the first time.
Yes, they would. And you will see the sunshine.
NME wrote that she was telling her audience, I grew up the same way you did, listened to the same things, was influenced by the same situations.
Take your time, baby.
That's not a music review. That's a description of what it feels like when someone speaks directly to your pain. What she built, hip-hop soul, was something the industry didn't even have a name for yet. Soul samples from Curtis Mayfield and Roy Ayers laid under Puffy's hip-hop beats with a voice that flatly refused to make pain presentable. No softening, no safety, just the truth. And here's what she said later. Looking back, about 4 million people responded to that album. And it turned out we were all suffering at the same time and didn't want to be here. 4 million people suffering in silence until she opened her mouth.
I know it is hard, but we will.
If you've ever been in a place where you couldn't talk to anyone, but a song found you and said, I know, that's exactly what this record did for millions of people.
Don't you rush a thing. Don't you know?
Mary J. Blige didn't just change R&B, she gave people a reason to stay.
For real, yes you would. And you'll get to
#8, TLC, Crazy Sexy Cool, 1994 to 95. The first thing you need to know about Crazy Sexy Cool is that it almost didn't happen the way it did. Lisa Left Eye Lopez was in a rehabilitation facility for alcoholism and facing arson charges for part of the recording.
Yo, left eye! Hit that one time!
She'd set fire to her boyfriend's shoes, and the fire spread to their mansion. Her role on the album was significantly reduced. 3 women trying to make one of the most important R&B albums ever made, and one of them was going through everything at once. The album came out on November 15th, 1994, 2 weeks before Mary J. Blige's My Life. Together, those 2 releases redefined what women in R&B were allowed to say. Crazy Sexy Cool peaked at #3 on the Billboard 200, and it spent over 2 years on that chart. 2 full years. Creep hit #1 for 4 weeks. Waterfalls followed it to the top and held there for 7. But here's the part that stops you in your tracks. Rolling Stone wrote that TLC emerged with the most effervescent and soulful girl group R&B anyone had seen since the Supremes. Crazy Sexy Cool became the first album by a girl group to be certified diamond by the RIAA. And to this day, today, it remains the best-selling album by a girl group in American music history. The best-selling in history. And it was made under chaos. With one member in rehab, by 3 young women from Atlanta who the industry was not expecting to hold any record for long, some music gets made in spite of everything falling apart around it. And if Waterfalls ever found you at a specific moment, in a specific room, with a specific feeling you've never been able to quite name since, you know exactly why this is #8. Number 7, D'Angelo, Voodoo, 2000. In 1995, D'Angelo released Brown Sugar and introduced a generation to something the mainstream had been slowly drifting away from, R&B, that felt like it came from a real place. Not a boardroom, not a radio format meeting, a church, a basement, somewhere honest. People called it neo soul and the name stuck, but Brown Sugar was just the introduction. Then in January 2000, Voodoo arrived. It won the Grammy for Best R&B Album that year. But here's what the Grammy doesn't tell you. The music video for Untitled, How Does It Feel?, where D'Angelo stood in near darkness, singing with a raw, aching vulnerability that the industry had almost never allowed from a black male R&B artist, sparked a reaction so intense, so fixated on his body and his image rather than the music, that he later said it contributed to years of withdrawal from the public eye. Stay with me on this part. The moment the industry wanted to reduce him to something visual, something surface, he stepped back. He essentially disappeared for 14 years. And that absence said something louder than any chart number could. He would rather be gone than compromise. Here's what Voodoo proved while the world was still hearing it for the first time. R&B can be art, not just product, not just hooks formatted for radio. Actual, uncompromising, deeply human art. And whether you heard this record at a house party in 2000 or discovered it much later at 2 a.m, it carries exactly the same gravity now as it did then. That's what real music does. It doesn't age, it just waits for you to catch up with it. Number 6, Usher, Confessions, 2004. By 2004, Usher had already had a successful career, 6 top 5 hits from his previous 2 albums, 2 Grammys. He was good, but Jermaine Dupri put it plainly when he talked about the media's relationship with Usher before this album. They weren't completely sold on who he was inside the music. The world knew Usher's songs. Nobody knew Usher. Then he made Confessions. At 25 years old, he opened with an admission of infidelity so raw and specific that the entire industry held its breath. The label was nervous.
Yeah. So there I said it.
Here was a young R&B superstar telling the truth about cheating in detail on record. Massive career risk. The kind of honesty that could end a career just as easily as it defines one. It debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200 with 1.1 million copies sold in its first week. The best opening week ever for a male R&B artist at that time. Yeah, spent 12 consecutive weeks at number 1. Burn and Confessions Part 2 followed to the top.
What? These are my confessions.
4 singles from one album occupying the top of the Hot 100 for a combined 28 weeks. Confessions went on to sell 10 million copies in the United States alone.
I don't know what to do, but to keep part 2 of my confessions.
The best-selling R&B album of the 21st century at the time. And then Billboard ran the year-end numbers. Of the 12 songs that reached number 1 on the Hot 100 in 2004, every single one was by a black artist. Everyone.
That I never did what I did. How I ain't ready for no kid.
12 out of 12. The Village Voice put it plainly. By the early 2000s, urban music was pop music. Not urban radio anymore, not the R&B chart, pop music, all of it. Usher's Confessions didn't just top the charts, it proved the argument once and for all. And whether you need to admit something to someone or whether 2004 just lives rent-free in your memory, you know exactly what this moment meant. Number 5, Beyoncé, Lemonade, 2016.
Mama, Louisiana. You mix that Negro with that Creole.
April 23rd, 2016. No announcement, no press tour, no rollout. HBO premiered a 1-hour film, and by the time it was over, Beyoncé had released her 6th studio album to the world simultaneously. The music was already out before most people realized it was coming. Lemonade debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200 with 653,000 equivalent album units. Every single one of its 12 tracks landed on the Billboard Hot 100 the week it dropped. The first time any woman in history had achieved that on a single album release. Every track on the chart at once.
If it hit it right, I might take them on a flight on my chopper. Drop 'em off.
But the numbers are the smallest part of this story. What Lemonade actually did was redefine what R&B was allowed to address. Marital betrayal, black womanhood.
You just might be a black Bill Gates in the making.
The generational weight of trauma carried through blood. Serena Williams dancing in a New Orleans mansion. Freedom, which Kamala Harris would use as her campaign anthem 8 years later.
I twirl on my haters.
This wasn't just a confessional record. It was a visual argument. It structured like a film, released like a film, for what black women's lives look like and what they deserve to have said out loud without apology.
I go hard, take what's mine,
At the 59th Grammy Awards, Lemonade was nominated for Album of the Year. It didn't win. Adele's 25 did, and Adele, accepting her own award on stage, said, "The Lemonade album is just so monumental." The winner dedicated the award to the person who deserved it. Rolling Stone later named Lemonade the #1 album of the entire 21st century. Sometimes dominance is counted in weeks at the top of a chart. Sometimes it's counted in decades of conversation that doesn't stop. And if you were really listening to Hold Up the first time you heard it, you know which kind this is. Number 4, SZA, SOS, 2022. 5 years. SZA made her audience wait 5 years between albums. And when SOS dropped on December 9th, 2022, after months of label disputes, contract negotiations, and what felt like an endless postponement, it opened with 318,000 equivalent album units and broke the record for the biggest streaming week ever for an R&B album. 404 million official on-demand streams in 7 days. That number is almost impossible to fully visualize. The album spent 10 weeks at #1 on the Billboard 200. 5 singles reached the top 10 of the Hot 100, the first R&B album to produce 5 top 10 hits since the Waiting to Exhale soundtrack in 1995. Kill Bill became her first #1. Snooze was the only song to chart on the Hot 100 for every single week of 2023. Every week. But here's the moment that I want you to actually sit with. In 2025, SOS broke Thriller's record. Michael Jackson's Thriller, the best-selling album of all time, the album that opened MTV's doors for all of R&B. had held the record for most weeks at number 1 on the Billboard Top R&B/Hip Hop Albums chart for over 40 years. 37 weeks. SOS passed it with 38. Think about what that means. The album that broke down R&B's walls at MTV, The Monument, and a young black woman from Los Angeles writing honest, complicated songs about modern love and modern heartbreak outlasted it on the R&B chart, where it matters most. Some records get broken quietly. This one made a statement. And if you've listened to SOS front to back, all 23 tracks, you already know it wasn't an accident. Number 3, Whitney Houston, I Will Always Love You, 1992. Something hits differently every time I think about this. I Will Always Love You wasn't Whitney Houston's song. Dolly Parton wrote it in 1974 as a farewell to her business partner and mentor. Written from the point of view of someone choosing to leave for her own good, even when it hurts. It's a country song. And when Whitney's team arranged a version for the Bodyguard soundtrack, the original plan was restraint. Simple, just voice. Then the decision was made to open it a cappella, nothing behind her, just that voice and silence before the music arrived. What came out of that is the most commercially dominant vocal performance in the history of recorded music. Released in November 1992, it entered the Hot 100 at number 40 and hit number 1 2 weeks later. Then it stayed 14 weeks at number 1. The longest run in the Hot 100's history at that point, immediately breaking the Boyz II Men record set earlier that same year. I Will Always Love You became the best-selling single by a woman in music history. The Bodyguard soundtrack spent 20 consecutive weeks at number 1 on the Billboard 200. Dolly Parton, whose original version Elvis Presley had once tried to record, said it plainly. When Whitney's version came out, I made enough money to buy Graceland. That's not a compliment. That's a fact about scale. And here's the part that makes this moment permanent beyond the numbers. When Whitney passed in February 2012, the song returned to the top 3 of the Hot 100. Because some records aren't just hits. They outlast the moment they were made for. They find new people and new losses again and again, forever. If this song has ever found you when you needed it, and I think it has, you already understand why this is number 3. Memories. Number 2, Michael Jackson, Thriller / The MTV Wall, 1983. On the night of May 16th, 1983, Michael Jackson performed Billie Jean at the Motown 25 television special for nearly 50 million viewers. He debuted a move that nobody in that audience had a name for yet. And what happened to Thriller's sales in the days that followed is almost impossible to believe. The album started selling 1 million copies a week. A week. And then came December, and the Thriller short film premiered on MTV. 14 minutes, directed by John Landis, the most ambitious music video ever made, and sales doubled again. But the part that most people gloss over is what had to happen first. Before Billie Jean could reach those 50 million viewers, someone had to fight to get it on television at all. MTV, which had launched in 1981 as a channel for what they defined internally as rock music, initially refused to air it. Black artists didn't fit their format. CBS Records pushed back hard enough that the wall came down, and once Billie Jean was on rotation, MTV's own ratings climbed during its airplay windows. Then Beat It, then Thriller. The channel was transformed.
You're out of time, 'cause this is Thriller.
The results speak in a language the music industry couldn't argue with. Thriller spent 37 weeks at #1 on the Billboard 200, still a record today. 7 of its 9 songs reached the top 10 of the Hot 100. It remains the best-selling album of all time. And Time magazine's music critic wrote in 1984 what the industry was only beginning to understand. Thriller had brought black music back to mainstream radio, from which it had been effectively banished in the previous decade. Banished. Then Michael Jackson kicked the door in, and R&B walked through and never left. Cultural critic Touré called him MTV's Jackie Robinson. When you understand what that really means, what it cost, what it changed, who benefited, you understand why this is #2. The moment before the moment that defines everything. #1, Marvin Gaye, What's Going On, 1971. Before any of the moments you've heard today, before the chart records, before the MTV battles, before the streaming numbers, there was a question. And the question came from a man who'd watched his brother come home from Vietnam, who was watching cities burn, who was watching America tear itself apart. He asked himself, with the world exploding around me, how am I supposed to keep singing love songs? Marvin Gaye went to Berry Gordy, the founder of Motown, the most successful black-owned record company in history, and said he wanted to record an album about the Vietnam War, about poverty, about police brutality, about what was actually happening in the world. Gordy's response was direct. "Marvin, don't be ridiculous. That's taking things too far." Gaye went on strike. He refused to record another Motown song until they released it. When the single was finally shipped to stores in January 1971 without Gordy's approval, sent out by a Motown sales executive without his knowledge, it sold 100,000 copies in its first week. Motown's fastest-selling single in the label's history. What's Going On hit #1 on the R&B chart and held there for 5 weeks. The album that followed was completed in 10 business days, and it went on to be named by Rolling Stone and by history among the greatest albums ever recorded. Now here's what I need you to carry with you. Every moment on this list, Janet reclaiming control of her voice, Teddy Riley fusing 2 worlds that didn't speak to each other, Boyz II Men holding the chart with 4 men in a harmony. Whitney stopping the world with one song, Mary J. Blige turning addiction and abuse into a covenant with millions of strangers, TLC rewriting what women were allowed to say, D'Angelo choosing disappearance over compromise, Usher making R&B the center of all of pop music, Beyoncé turning an album into a political act, SZA outlasting Thriller on the R&B chart. Every single one of them exists in the tradition that Marvin Gaye started the moment he said, "I will not sing pretty things when the world needs truth." That's not just a great album, that's a promise a promise R&B made to the world in 1971. And more than 50 years later, it's still keeping it.